What's bothering you at work? Do you have questions about where the business is going or how it's doing? Talkback is the staff communication initiative that gives everyone a chance to put their questions to senior management. It's open to staff from all Victorian businesses, National Bus Company, M-Train, M-Tram and V-Line. Talkback recently gave staff an opportunity to question CEO Craig Wallace, Peter Strachan, the Chief Operating Officer for Victoria and Western Australia, Alan Chaplin, Managing Director Trains, and Kim Wallace, Head of Human Resources. This tape is an edited version of that 2-hour event. We know that there are staff who wanted to attend Talkback but couldn't make it. So we're currently looking at a program of smaller Talkback functions to complement the continued company-wide Talkback program. These would be held in work areas like bus or tram depots. There are still some issues to work out, but we hope to let you know more about this shortly. Now, let's go to the first question.
It's been coming up for 3 years since privatisation. How would, probably Peter could answer this, how would you describe the working relationship between National Express and the Victorian government after this time?
I think what we've got is a very business-like relationship between ourselves and the Victorian government. I think if we go back over the 3 years, we were both new to this game. We were new to franchising in Victoria, and the government was new to having the railway, the tramway, and certainly parts of other public transport in private operation. So I think there's been very much a learning process that's evolved over the 3 years. I have to say that I think we enjoy a good relationship with both the officers of the government, and we deal with officers at all levels, from John Taylor, the Director of Public Transport, to the various project teams led by people like Graham Cunningham, who's looking at fast rail, all the way through the different levels of officers in their departments. And I think we also enjoy a good relationship with the politicians, with the government, with the minister, and with the cabinet. And we take really quite a lot of care in trying to build that relationship with the government. I think in any relationship, whether it's like a marriage or it's like a partnership or whatever, we will have our ups and downs. But I think the good thing about the relationship that we have with the government is that we can sit down and talk about those things. I've known relationships with governments and with councils in the past where you end up in a standoff position, where you don't actually talk to each other and you throw bricks at each other in the media or in the press. And I'm pleased to say we don't have that type of relationship between ourselves, National Express, and the State Government of Victoria. If we've got anything to say to each other, we say it in private and sort out the issues. So I think an evolving process, working towards a feeling of partnership between ourselves and the state, and I think a maturing good relationship between ourselves and who effectively is our principal stakeholder, state government.
Just a couple of observations. We didn't envisage when we took the franchises on that there was going to be a change of government. Most Victorians didn't. There was, and I think to the credit of the Bracks government, they have been very supportive of the concept of the privatisation. They have also recognised that there has, as Peter indicated, been a number of things that have changed, unforeseen circumstances. And to their credit, rather than just saying not our problem, they've been prepared to step up to the mark. And in the last 6 months in the public arena, you'll have seen that there's been a lot of activity to resolve a lot of the past issues that were unforeseen. They've resolved those where they didn't necessarily need to. So I think it, as Peter indicated, it's been a very encouraging relationship and one that we would continue to see going forward as well.
In relation to that question, I'd like to ask the panel a question with regard to your relationship with the government and in particular the judicial system. As you will well know that not very long ago, at least to my knowledge, 2 customers, because they didn't necessarily have the correct change, they travelled on the public transport system without a ticket. They were apprehended by the authorised officers and received a fine in the mail. And we have been guaranteed by our Minister for Transport that he will back us up in matters like that. And yet both those 2 people, according to my knowledge, were let off scot-free. So where do we go from there? Are we serious about fare evasion?
Start with that one if I can. I saw your name on as soon as you started talking, I knew it was Minister for Transport is very aware and very focused on the issue of fare evasion, and whilst it has been a collective operators initiative, it has very much been done in conjunction with the Victorian Government, and as you will have seen Peter Batchelor himself, the Minister for Transport, out on the front foot reinforcing how it is unacceptable and playing his part. At the end of the day, as you would know, people have the right, the opportunity to challenge the offence with which they've been charged, and it was not of our doing. It was in fact a decision in the court that those people were let off. In the instance of the first one, the minister, within 24 hours, had his legal advisors and his political advisors have a quick look at it and went straight on the front foot and said, we're appealing. So I think that is a fair indication that he is prepared, and the Bracks government are prepared to play their part in reinforcing the message that fare evasion is like shop stealing. It's not acceptable. It's not an acceptable behaviour, and they are certainly supportive of it. They're also very aware that not only is it unacceptable behaviour, but fare evasion is a major issue that will see us financially successful or otherwise. So they're very keen to make sure that that is hit hard early on in the piece, and that people do accept that it is unacceptable.
On the issue of fare evasion as well, obviously you've taken into consideration the suburban stations and all that sort of thing, but what about the country stations?
We have focused very much, you're quite right, on the metropolitan issue, but you'll be pleased to hear that we are in the final stages of agreeing with all the V-Line, the management team, a strategy to take it on to V-Line. We're very aware of the issues. There's some fundamental, V-Line had a culture of you must have a ticket before you board the train, and that culture's been eroded. We have to make sure that we have got in place some prerequisites, I would call it, to make sure that if we start to reinforce that, we can actually satisfy the demand at the country station booking windows, and we recognise that. And I think that's the answer I would want to give you. Recognise that the current system of taking a very robust fare evasion strategy onto V-Line has to be done when we've considered the extra duties on the conductors, the extra responsibilities and flow onto the stations, the use of AOs and other authorised officers and other personnel to support you at Spencer Street. We're looking at the whole. We actually have got a very almost complete strategy to support V-Line on fare evasion, which I would be very surprised if we didn't become more aware of in the next few weeks. It was taken through all the V-Line managers were taken through it last Tuesday at Ballarat, and to have the local input into how we propose to take that forward. So
most of the stations are manned, but some of the stations are not manned.
Yes,
and that's where it becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
Because if you want to pull someone off the train, I mean, I can always go and say, you're off at the next stop. But I need some amount of, say, police assistance or something like that to bodily push them out the train, you see?
And that's some of the issues we're wrestling with, of the powers of the conductors, whether they should have greater powers in respect to, similar to an authorised officer. Issuing tickets, we very much recognise that the manual writing of tickets is outdated, and the ability to quickly get through trains and to issue tickets on V-Line is electronically. If you go anywhere, you see now traffic wardens, as I've witnessed a couple of times, can incredibly quickly issue you with a $40 ticket, and that kind of flexibility and use of technology is the one area that we're looking at.
And we've got a question in the back row.
This doesn't relate to buses also. Just a question probably relates back to you, Craig, regarding profitability and performance. Okay, I'm just wondering, across Australia, how does NX in Victoria perform? How are they comparing? And between the individual companies within Victoria, is any one company performing better or worse than the others?
Yep. Let's talk about this year. We're in the middle of it. I think it's been said on the public record that at best we will break even across Australia for the year. What does that mean for Victoria, or what does it mean for buses? I guess collectively it means buses make a little bit of money, and from the three franchises' point of view, we're going to lose money. And that's a product of a number of things, a lot of which we've spoken about before, a combination of fare evasion and vandalism and ticketing system, etc. Things that we are right in the midst of talking to government with at the moment, as are all of the operators. A combination of those factors, and the fact that the subsidy that we're paid by government, particularly on the franchises, drops away significantly year by year. You would have seen a couple of months ago, in March, the announcement by the Minister for Transport that they had agreed to pay to all of the operators a significant amount of money, in our case just on $50 million. That was settlement of two issues, one for what we call PGI, Passenger Growth Incentive, and that was paying us money in recognition for the fact that we have actually grown patronage significantly since we've started, but the mechanism that was put in place didn't actually reward us for that. So they've said, OK, we accept you've grown it, here's a payment in recognition of that, and they paid amounts to the other operators as well. The more significant part of that settlement actually related to a whole lot of contractual claims that have been built up since we first started operating. So that was all about the past. What we are now discussing with government, as are the other operators for the particular franchises, is there a better model, or how should we change the model going forward so that it actually, given that we know things now that we didn't know when we first started and they didn't know either, that it's a better model that will generate better benefits for the customer, greater benefits politically for the government, but benefits also for all of us in terms of more viable businesses going forward. So it's not just about where are we at now, it's about where are we going into the future, and that's what we're talking to government about addressing at the present time. Just to come back to the buses, I think it's also important to recognise that we make a little bit of money on the buses. National Bus, for example, we barely wash our face. Some of the other businesses have some small profits, but in a very challenging environment. And again, we are doing all that we can to grow the businesses. We certainly are with National Bus, as probably the only bus company in Melbourne that's actually growing the business. But we need the government's support to keep growing it, because for us to keep introducing new buses and growing the system, putting more buses out there, which is what government wants, we need their help to do it, because while we're not making big profits, we haven't got the cash to keep putting back in. And that's what we're talking to government about. We're doing our bit, growing the business. How can you help us to try and grow it even faster? Help us to get more buses into the system so that we can carry more customers and move towards the 2020 vision of getting more people on public transport and out of their private cars by the year 2020.
We've had a lot of train and tram issues. I think we might have a bus issue over here.
Yeah, one of the major concerns on the buses, is there any chance of speeding up the bus replacement program, as we're basically driving bombs that are not suitable for things? And as a follow-on, what is being done to improve quality control of new buses? Because we've got 13 new buses out there that are going to produce work cover claims like you've never seen before.
Okay, I'll tell you those two. It's back to this partnership theme of government. We're having discussions with government about NBC now and the whole bus replacement programme. It's aligned with what we want to do in terms of the Doncaster new park and ride. We would very much like to get some new vehicles in there, so that's a whole showcase route. We've got the new park and ride facility, we've got a good freeway service, we've got some good modern vehicles, and that's a discussion that we're having currently with government, because it's certainly the intention, yes, to have some further new buses in NBC in fairly short order, but we want to get the commercial reality of that right. In terms of quality control, when we go out for the next tranche of fleet replacement in NBC and in any of our bus companies, we will have a much more rigorous quality control process than we've seen thus far. The procurement process that we've gone through in terms of invitation to tender, in terms of specification and in terms of project management will be more rigorous than it's been in the past, because discussions that I know Peter Mackenzie and Terry Scott and I have had suggest that what he's saying is absolutely spot on. Some of the things that we've had delivered to us from the manufacturers and the bodybuilders are not up to scratch. And it's no different in terms of bus or train or tram. I think Alan and I both have the experience that says unless you sit on the manufacturer, unless you're absolutely clear about your specification and absolutely clear that you're not going to accept the vehicle from them until it's right, they will try and give you something that isn't quite finished. And we've seen that time and time and time again. So he points well made.
And I think to that point, Peter, I mean, one of the great benefits that we have as National Express around Australia is a lot of clout with the manufacturers. So, you know, we are purchasing buses obviously for Sydney and Brisbane and Perth as well. So it's not as if we're being dictated to. We have the clout to be able to make sure that this is not going to happen again, that the quality control is there going forward.
We just have a specific question pre-submitted about what is going to happen in terms of changes to the fleet at the North Fitzroy bus depot this year.
Well, again, that's all linked in with both discussions with government about how we service the inner city better and the whole commercial procurement strategy for new buses. And that, we would hope, would inject some new vehicles into both North Fitzroy and Doncaster, in view of what I've said about park and ride.
Sorry, a follow-up here?
Is there any chance then of getting MA in to fix up the accelerator?
Yeah.
Because we're getting a lot of drivers that are having trouble with their legs already, and when they're a brand new bus.
Yeah, we've had, I know Terry Scott, Peter McKenzie have had discussions with MAN about that. As with all of these things, you get into a contractual, they say it's fit for purpose, we say it's not. But to Craig's point, given that we have considerable leverage with that particular manufacturer, we're going to run them pretty hard and make sure that they do sort it out.
What about the problem with signal failures between Melbourne and Ballarat? Conductors copping quite a bit of flack over it and fairly keenly interested.
Yeah, and millipedes.
Millipedes.
If I can pick up on that. Yeah, I don't want to sound too negative in this, but we do have a continual problem with some infrastructure issues on the Freight Australia network, which, as I'm sure the VLP staff appreciate, is we buy access for VLP services across the network, and we have got quite an action list, and I can assure you that my and the infrastructure team's phone and communication with Freight Australia, not just in the Rockbank and Deer Park, but also Bunyip, Langwarry, and there are other areas on the Freight Australia where consistently the infrastructure failure is letting it down. In fairness to them, we are currently now at the very final stages of the planning for the Fast Train project, which is a substantial upgrade across all 4 routes, and there are parts of the infrastructure that let down an impact on our services which would be due for change during that project. So not surprisingly and perfectly understandable, the changeover and the modernisation of the equipment that's given as difficulty will take effect as part of that project. So there is a delay. We are putting a great deal of store in the improvement that we'll get as part of the project, but both on track condition and ride quality, on equipment failure rates, we are consistently pressing our Freight Australia colleagues to do something in the short term to improve on this. As for millipedes, it's been quite a challenge.
Just building on Alan's point and to Craig's point about OPR and V-line being a structural issue, one of the things that we do need to get right for OPR and V-line is to make sure that the access provider, Freight Australia, is financially incentivised to do the right thing by the infrastructure. Because at the moment, Freight Australia don't suffer sufficient financial penalty to make sure that they address some of the signal failures and some of the track condition failures that they've got there at the moment. So that's again one of the discussions that we're having at the moment with government, to make sure that we change the regime sufficiently that incentivises freight to do the right thing.
During Talkback, a question was asked by an authorised officer who'd been assaulted on duty and wanted to know about the counselling and support available for staff who suffer an assault or other workplace injury. The question identifies this person, so to respect their privacy, it hasn't been included on this tape, but this is Kim Wallace's answer to the question.
There are a number of services that are actually available to staff through the workers' compensation system. So if someone who was assaulted has lodged a claim for workers' compensation, then the insurers will refer them generally to a counselling service. By the same token, we've also got a counselling service that is available that line managers can provide access to. But certainly if at any time an employee doesn't feel that they're getting the right level of support, then they're more than welcome to contact me and we will find an alternative. It's one of those areas where it's not a case of one size fits all, and where we need to source something else, then certainly we will do that. I think the other thing also is that this is an area where probably we do need to do a little bit more work, and there is some work being undertaken with new medical providers and so on that will help us pick up in some of these areas also.
But Kim, you're confident that those facilities are in place?
Yes, they are certainly in place, and we will obviously make every endeavour to ensure that the line managers in this case are aware of it, so that no one else feels the way that you're feeling about this.
This is the end of side 1. Please fast forward to the end of the tape and then turn over to listen to side 2. Now, we have another question here from someone in the cars office at V-Line. They ask, looking into the future at privatisation, what would happen if privatisation reverted back to government?
Point one, I think, is I don't see a scenario where privatisation falls back to government. As Craig said right at the start of Talkback, we didn't expect the current government to be in power. I think if they were being honest, they wouldn't have expected to be in power in November '99. But they've embraced the privatisation model and want to work in partnership with the private operators through into the future. So I don't see a change of policy of direction there. Is the OPR something for the future? Yes, I think it is. I think we can all have a debate about the workings of OPR and whether it's right and wrong and some of the arithmetic calibrations that sit within OPR, and we would all have a view. But I think as an incentive for the operator to do the right thing in terms of reliability, performance, punctuality performance, there has to be something there within the contractual arrangement with government that forces us, all of us as the operator, to run the trains on time and run the trains, trams that we expect to run. So I see it being there in the future. Whether it's precisely in the same form in each of the businesses that we have now, I think there'll be a question mark on that. I think there's some tweaks to be done on it, but I would certainly see OPR as something going into the future.
Could I just supplement that with my engineering hat on? I've worked in non-OPR railways and OPR railways, and from an engineer's point of view, to generate the business case, the financial case to replace infrastructure, to upgrade things, without the OPR regime, it's actually very difficult to come up with, or more difficult to come up with the justification to make investment. With OPR, where if an item of equipment is failing and it's costing you penalties, it's far easier to translate that into the commercial business case to go for investment. So from an engineer's point of view and an investment, the OPR regime is actually very positive. As Peter says, there are swings and roundabouts, and there are things about the regime that we'd all like to change, but that's one very positive issue that arises from OPR.
Vandalism again. Vandalism probably has the most impact on the company ability to deliver a service as well as possibly even grow the business. Any future strategies for dealing with the problem?
Yeah, very, very much so. This is something we talked about at the last Talkback, I think, wasn't it? And we talked about fencing and goodness. But you had 2 goes at it. We shouldn't allow that. The same question 2 Talkbacks running. So it was a put us on notice question the last time, was it? Yeah, quite right. We've taken, I think, quite a significant step in the last couple of months in terms of vandalism. I've appointed Trevor Greer. Trevor was the General Manager of Tram, who will be known to Trammy colleagues amongst us. I've appointed Trevor to be a new job heading up our look at personal security, system safety, system vandalism, safety and integrity. And Trevor's been at that now for about 6 weeks. He's produced a first report which he's shared with me, and I'll be sharing that with wider team colleagues in the next couple of weeks. And Trevor has, I think, around 28 different recommendations in that report, right the way through from how do we stop graffiti, how do we clean it up better, how do we fence the line side, what do we do with CCTV cameras. Because we thought it was important actually to have somebody at a senior level in the company focusing on this issue. Giving it as a bit part job to do in my job, or Alan's job, or Peter McKenzie's job, just was not working. We needed somebody to focus on this full time. Trevor has done a lot of work also with the Transit Police and some of the undercover operations that they've been doing at places like Frankston and Dandenong recently is as a result of that activity. So I think you'll see, hopefully by the time you ask the question for the 3rd time, I thought at the next Talkback, you'll see some real tangible evidence that we've got a grip of this. But let's not be under any illusion, and I think we said this the last time, let's not be naive about this. It's a big uphill struggle to tackle it, because no sooner do you tackle it somewhere, it goes somewhere else.
It is a social problem.
It is, yeah.
Last time, but is the government assisting in any strategies?
Yeah, government's very supportive of what we're doing. We've shared with them the fact that we've created the new role at a senior level for Trevor. There is the thing that they call the Safe Travel Task Force, which is participated in by a range of stakeholders, including government, and Trevor will be sitting on that for us. So government's very supportive, and we've had embryonic discussions, back to the point about OPR, with them about whether we could commute some of the OPR penalties into paying for things that would rectify and fix up some of the vandalism issues.
Yeah, if I could supplement that. I think it's always easy to concentrate on what's wrong, and we have got an awful lot of areas we have to tackle, but we are starting to make some tangible inroads in some areas. The refurb-based comments, which although they're still being targeted with vandalism, the change to the windows at the end of the carriages, the CCTV equipment, the change of floor covering to make it easier to remove graffiti on the floors rather than the carpets. We're starting to see a very marked decrease in the level of vandalism on the middle to outer sections of the end vehicles. Behind the driver's cab is now a target area. We are taking action. In fact, Trevor and I had a session yesterday on looking at bolstering up far more. You will see a trial of far more overt cameras with warning signs to say to try and target that area. So we're consistently trying to tackle the area and then expand it out. So there is signs that we're starting to get on top of it. Graffiti in the eastern section. We've got a new contractor in there who, from feedback I was out on Friday, is starting to get on top of graffiti and doing a very good job. And we'll recognise contractors who do a good job and we'll try to expand that across the rest of the network. So there is signs of success. The other issue, just to supplement, is that we have had a series of sessions with the judiciary, the magistrates, to convey to them the seriousness of vandalism and graffiti, to try and explain to the judges that hear the panel cases that it is a serious issue. It intimidates our customers, it intimidates our staff, that we should try and encourage them to take a very firm line with those individuals we get up in court. I know they're very few and they're a lot less than we'd all like to see, but we have tried to influence the judiciary as the judiciary, but we've tried to convey to them that we don't take it as a soft issue. We would like them to take a very firm view on the people we do apprehend. And Fred Tata, if those of you who know Fred, if you're ever in 459 Collins Street, Fred uses the information from the on-train CCTV equipment and really works very closely with the police to try and get to target those individuals. And it's a small minority of the population, and very often it's the same people that are doing the same thing.
Russell was talking about safety on trains. As you're well aware, we've had quite a number of tram drivers assaulted because we're more open to the public, and we've only got the small door. So what's happening in that area as far as the safety? Because everything seems to be just moving very slowly.
It's a good point. Trevor, in his new role, obviously will be acutely aware of what the situation in Tram is. I've asked him to focus on all the businesses, including bus, because whilst in sheer number of incidents, cost of damage and the number of staff and customer issues that we have, train is by far the biggest. That doesn't mean to say we're going to ignore tram or bus. So I've asked Trevor to focus equally on each part of the business. And in his 28-point plan, there were a number of issues to do with should we consider properly installing CCTV on trams. I know we've had a trial and Yarra have had a trial, and that's again part of the discussions that we'll be having with government about do they want to fund that as a future project. We think that would be quite a reasonable thing to do in terms of securing the environment on board a tram. We're also looking at deploying some of the security staff, the train patrollers, onto the tram network as well, because we think if they're capable of working in a secure environment on the train system, why doesn't that apply to tram as well? And Peter Mackenzie, through his team and through Stuart Trent's team, have been having discussions there as well. So there's a number of initiatives that we want to deploy on tram.
There's been a talk about security for metro station staff and metro staff and train drivers. Wheel-on conductors on trains 350 kilometres. They're the only person on that train handling 200 people. If there's a disturbance or a problem with an intoxicated person, drugs, which they come across, quite a few people are shooting up on trains, etc. Where OPR is concerned, they're not supposed to go on the train. But realistically, there's security safety and the security safety that have to be run on there. So they pull up trains at the station. The station's not manned, so what they usually do is get the driver, get the train control, call the police. 40-50 minutes later, the train's 40-50 minutes late, police haven't turned up. And if they ignore such a thing, going to the first main station, that might be 200 kilometres. So are there any plans in the future to look at security and safety for the train conductors as well?
If you believe that that you or the customers or individuals at the station are going to be endangered and unsafe, I will back you every time in terms of holding that train against the OPR penalties. Let's not worry about the OPR penalties. Let's use the judgment and the common sense that says if you think you're going to need help and stop the train to get help, do that. That's first and foremost. It's a judgment call, but that's why you're there in the job, because you can use that judgment and work it out what the best call is. In terms of assistance, Alan, do you want to talk about that? Well, yeah, I mean, I just pick up on that point. The crawl of that's true, and that I wouldn't, staff have to understand, and they do, the areas where it's not worth engaging individuals, and where the most sensible thing for you and even for the other customers is to back off. I think, generally, to back Peter up, we have to look at the training we give to our staff on confrontation management, of communication, what is reasonable to do and what's not reasonable to do, why would it be worth engaging an individual on an issue, and when it's worthwhile just leaving them in the corner and backing away. All those are issues which can be addressed through training, and that's the issue I would pick up from your question, is we have to continually work with our staff to train and refresh the training for such incidents.
A question in the back.
Just in relation to what we were talking about before, the OPR, the service delivery, we're currently delivering a service of exceptional delivery and punctuality, which is obviously returning bonuses to the company. How does that place the company for investment and so forth? And also with the future extensions planned as Cranbourne East, Craigieburn, Geelong electrification.
OPR is one that is designed to deliver financial benefits for us when we perform, and likewise, penalties when we don't. So it has, no question, it has improved and it has delivered benefits for us. And we'd like to think that it continues to get better and helps the organisation, given the financial position that I was talking about earlier on. And I talk about, I'm talking about M-Train, if you like, in that respect. V-Line, obviously, there's a structural issue there that we are in discussion with government about. Yes, the improvement is delivered, but we don't get the financial benefit, frankly, as a result of the improvement there, and that's something that we believe needs to change anyway. In respect of some of the developments, Craigieburn was announced as part of the state government's budget just last week. So that one's a goer, as Sydenham's been recently successfully completed. We'd like to think that Craigieburn's now off and running with the funding that's been committed by government. Cranbourne East I wasn't able to answer. There was Russell suggested it was actually a franchise commitment, Peter.
Cranbourne East was a franchise commitment to look at a feasibility study of it, not to actually do the thing. We've looked at the feasibility study and said to government, well, if you want to pay X, and we can take a view as to what X is, you can put it on your priority list and we'll work the way through it. Government decided that the next priority after Sydenham, as Craig said, which I have to say has been incredibly successful in attracting new business to public transport. The car parking issues that we're facing there at the moment are an indication of we are a victim of our own success at Sydenham, so it's been phenomenally successful as a project. So they've decided to go for Craigieburn as the next tranche of electrification extension, and I think they've committed a sum of somewhere near $96 million from recollection of the budget to do that upgrade. So not an insignificant investment. Whether, having done the feasibility study, it's in their mind to do Cranbourne East in another budget cycle, I'm not aware of that at the moment.
We have a problem out at Sydenham Water Gardens. What is the actual station? Different parts of the area we advertise it as Sydenham on hazard information displays. Further down the line we advertise it again as Water Gardens. Will it ever change?
Yeah, it's we have an identity crisis. I think we're now quite clear what we want to call ourselves. It's Water Gardens, formerly known as Sydenham, but yeah, it's a practical problem arisen from what was a very good initiative, and it was a positive initiative, but the practical implications of that as it flowed through the network on maps, communication to staff, it was done very last minute in the project. I was deeply involved, and the change of name really was done almost within the last few weeks of, or certainly the last month of the overall project. So I think we just have a difficult situation that will take time to work through, both in staff becoming familiar with water gardens and the termination of the line, and in practical issues of maps and leaflets and timetables, etc. So yes, it's
while we're on the station formerly known as, what's happening with the car park?
The car park is the original scheme for Sydenham included use of land which is owned by the council, which was an oil refinery and therefore requires some cleaning up to be done. During the project, it became clear that the discussions between the former owners, the operators of the refinery, the oil company that operated the land and caused the contamination, and the council were going to be protracted. So we had to segregate an area of car park. As Peter, I think, alluded to, the use of the car parking we did some research prior to opening and thought that the level of car park provided would be adequate. It isn't. And we're currently working with QIC, Queensland Investment Company, who own the larger site, to see if we can identify some areas that we can provide hardcore, just put down a gravel covering to provide up to 200 extra car parking spaces. The Department of Environment and ourselves have committed the money required to do that work. The only thing we need is QIC's approval to do that, because it's on land that will ultimately be developed to provide further shopping centre. So it's an interim solution, and we are just waiting on their response to say yes, you can use it on an interim basis. And the long-term situation, the council and the DOI are still committed to free up the former oil site to provide 200 additional spaces.
Would National Express ever consider a share purchase plan for employees?
Perhaps I can tackle that one if I can. National Express is obviously a publicly listed company in London. If people want to buy shares that way, they can do it. I think the concept of the employees having a financial involvement in an organisation is a commendable thing, and I think the reality for the moment is it's, as I say, National Express is listed in London, not in Australia. It's unlikely that will change in the short term. But I think if we just step back for a moment and think about where we are with the businesses in Melbourne and Australia, the reality is at the moment that if we were to take up shares in the businesses that we have here, we would all be contributing cash into the business, not taking dividends out. And by that I mean the current discussions that we're having with government, the settlement that we had with them a couple of months ago of the retrospective claims that we had, were all issues that were addressing our ongoing financial viability. And we are right in the middle of that discussion at the moment with government, to ensuring that for all of the operators there is long-term profitability. And profit is not a dirty word. Profit is what we need by way of cash to put it back in the business. Because the reality of all of our businesses, bus, tram or train, is that it is high cash business. We need to keep investing back in the infrastructure, in the rolling stock, in the refurbishment. Everything that we earn in the shorter term, we need to put it back into the business. So yes, there is a time and a place for us to be able to take up ownership of the business. But I suggest to all of you that now is not the right time, because it is all about getting all of the cash that we can and putting it back into the business. And the reality is right now that the UK, our London colleagues and owners, are the ones who've been putting all of that cash into the business. If we were to take it up now, we'd be putting the cash in. Longer term, if we can get ourselves onto a good profitable footing and generating sufficient cash to put back into the business, then that's where longer term there may be an opportunity to change the environment and think about some form of employee involvement and ownership in the business, but that's certainly long term.
Craig, if not share ownership immediately, what about broader forms of salary sacrifice that go beyond superannuation?
Yep. And maybe I'll comment on that. I've in recent months brought on board into my HR team a remuneration benefit specialist, because one of the things clearly we need to be able to do is provide offerings from a remuneration perspective that are both attractive for people to come and work for National Express, but also make people want to stay with us, because once we've captured the talent and we've got them in positions, we want to be able to hang on to them. There's a range of complexities that various federal governments have made in the area of salary packaging with regards to fringe benefits tax and whether it's an attractive option for an individual or not. So it's not one of those things that we can actually roll out in 5 minutes. But now that we've got some additional expertise on board, we'll be working over the next few months to try and find a range of things that we can put out there in the organisation as offerings to people that will hopefully be available from early next year.
we will try and fit in one final question, and it's over here on the side.
As our parent company is coloured red, white and blue, and my football club happens to be the Western Bulldogs, would there be any chance of sponsoring the Bullets?
I can give you the answer to that one, because we actually jokingly asked the question last week, and the answer was no. I was in London last week, and the answer was no. I think, jokes aside, the issue that National Express stays committed to globally is utilising the strength of the local brands. And I noticed there was a question there about V-Line branding, and V-Line has such great strength and is so well known in regional Victoria and in Melbourne as well that we'd be crazy to want to change it. But frankly, big sponsorship to go to the Western Bulldogs, so we'll park that one, I think. So.
We hope you found this tape interesting and informative, and we welcome you to attend the next Talkback, which will be held in around 6 months. If you still have questions that are unanswered, you can submit these by phone, fax or email to Peter Strachan, who'll respond in writing. Peter's contact details are on the letter that came with this tape and are also available from your supervisor.